trying to be able to watch and comment at the same time. Alrighty, welcome to another Learning Live. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Deckle trimmer. And this is slowly, well, not even slowly, it's quickly becoming one of my favorite tools to use, just as a general change from your regular square straight cut chopper and the usual sort of distressing methods for distressing paper. So a couple of things just to start us off. Hi Carolyn, good. I'm starting to see people coming in. That's a good thing. Okay, so just to start off, the Deckle trimmer is considered a specialty blade trimmer. So generally speaking, cutters that have anything special about them other than the fact that they just cut a straight line tend to be pretty expensive because of the tooling and dyeing that is required for creating an edge like this. And you would expect us to pay a fair bit of money for that, but actually I'm finding that this Deckle trimmer is a really good price. I looked online and I was looking for Deckle rulers, paper rippers, Deckle scissors, those kinds of things. And anything that was a decent product and not like from the dollar store or Walmart came out to be only slightly less expensive than this Deckle trimmer. And there's a couple of really good reasons why I like this trimmer versus using your regular ripping ruler and your Deckle scissors. First of all, it can cut up to about 130 pounds. So I have cut 130 pound paper on it, and I'll show you some examples of things that I've cut. And it cuts through that. Now beyond that, it gets a little bit dicey. Because one of the biggest problems is that it's not really a problem, but anything you cut with a Deckle trimmer, you want to make sure you're using more force than if you were using a regular trimmer. So it can cut up to 130 pounds in my experience. It may cut more than that. Needs more pressure than a regular trimmer. And you have to commit to your cut. You can't open your trimmer and go, oh. It has to be a good chomp, and that's what gets you the nice clean cut edge. If you go too slow, what ends up happening is that the paper doesn't cut cleanly, and you end up with some little bits of fluffy stuff left along the edge. So you have to give it a good committed chop. So it cuts most papers. It cuts everything that I've tried. And I saw a demo where it also cut Yupo paper. And Yupo paper is a plastic paper product. And the reason why it's surprising that it cuts that is that with Yupo paper, if it's not a straight blade, it can just bend over when you're trying to cut it. So this will cut it as long as you use that committed chomp. Hi Leslie, good to see you. In that, it will cut Yupo paper, which is used for alcohol ink. And there's other substrates it'll cut. It'll cut tag, it'll cut heavyweight cardstock. It will cut up to 130 pound media paper and watercolor paper and regular paper it cuts as well. But the trick to all those substrates, even to the Yupo paper, is that committed chomp. You want it to really chomp down. No messing around with that. One of the other things that I find is excellent is that if you look at the blade on this trimmer, there is no repeat. Sorry, I'm trying to go around maybe I can show you on this side. There is no repeat in the edge. The edge is one full, what is that, 8-inch length, or 9-inch length. Let me tell you what it is. It is a 9-inch length. So for 9 inches, it is completely a different pattern. There's no repeat in this. Whereas when you buy Deckle scissors or a Deckle ripper, you can only rip so far and then you have to repeat the pattern. So that's another really great thing about this is you can move your paper along the mat or the base and get different cuts depending on where you're cutting on the blade, and it would never look the same. So a couple of things about the mechanics of this. At the very top of the blade, it is less deckly than if you move down to the bottom of the blade. And the simple reason for that is because in the construction of this, if it were something that just went together like that, it would, they could have made it more deckly up at the top, but because it's got this action, they have to be able to start the deckle somewhere, and they can't start it right at the join because then it would hook and you wouldn't be able to get it past. So they have given you a slight deckle up at the top edge and then into a much more aggressive deckle about 2 inches down, and that's all about mechanics. It has nothing to do with anything else. You'll never find a chopper that chops on a vortex that you can do all deckle from top to bottom. So like I said, if it was going top down, straight down, you could do it from top to bottom, but because this is on it has a vortex, you need to allow some time for the blade to get into position and then cut those deckles. Now, don't get me wrong, it is deckled from top to bottom. It's just slighter deckle at the top than at the bottom. And you will see most people using it from the bottom up because the best deckles are down from about 2 inches down. So be aware of that. And what else do I need to tell you? It also gives you a really good edge, and I'll show you some edges in a moment. It doesn't look cheesy, you know. It's not like too overdone. It looks like rip paper, and it feels like rip paper when you touch the edge. And when you ink it as well along the edge, it really inks up nicely. It gives you a darker ridge along the edge than into the paper, so that looks quite nice. Now, so with cutting is, I've just got a piece of my scrap paper that I was using for some plain with jelly print. So with the cutting, it can cut really, really, really thin pieces. So you don't have the same margin that you have to use for, I'll do it on this side down here, that you have to use for if you're ripping paper with a ruler or without. You usually need about a 1/2 inch for that. Here I've got, if I'm lucky, I've got a 1/16 of an inch, and when I commit to that cut, I get a very thin cut off piece. So if you're, you know, about doing your cards and your layouts and whatever and your mounting of your photos, and then you suddenly decide, oh, I'd really like to cut that photo with a deckle edge, or I'd like to cut that mat with a deckle edge, you really can get a small slice off it so that you're not looking at that 1/2 inch you would have to have if you were to manually rip it. So that's kind of a fun thing to note. What else? Well, let me just kind of get into some cutting for you. So I want to do a card, And I am going to deckle the actual card base. So I have my card base here, and I'm going to fold it over and line it up like you usually do. And I'm going to double width, so that's two cards together. I'm going to, I'll make sure I got that nicely. I'm going to just give it that 1/16 of an inch. And as I said before, it's all about the commitment. You want a good hard push, not a soft and slow push. So you could hear that crunching going on. So this is what it took off my paper, not very much at all. And this is the edge that I'm left with. Let me bring that up to the camera for you to see. So you can see that deckly edge, and there is not a repeat on that edge. Now I'm going to turn it around again. Please leave your questions in the chat. I'm not able, unfortunately, to see it, so I'll have to answer your questions after the fact. And there again, look at how thin that little piece of paper is that I took off here. And I'm going to turn it around the other way so I don't get the same cut on this side as on that side. And there you go. And there's my deckle edged card. And it's really quite a fun thing to look at. Now, I am going to, with a regular cutter, my other Tonic cutter, which I absolutely love. We're switching out just for a moment because I want to show you the layering technique. So now I've got my card fancied up. I'm going to put some glitter on it. So I am going to just double check my measurements now. Okay, because it does take some off. So 4 by 5 1/4 is where I'm going to cut my glitter paper. 5 by 5 1/4. There we go. And just get rid of that. So I have my deckle edge, and then I have a clean cut edge that's going to go on the card. So let me just stick that down while I'm thinking of it. And I'm using the scrapbook adhesives, and this is the refillable one. So you just pop that one open. If I can figure out how to do that. Oh, maybe it isn't. Oh, no, it is. So you just pop it open, and you can refill the innards, just like the big large one. So if you're wondering what I'm using. And now I'm just going to make sure I line this up nicely so I can see my deckle edge around the outside. And that's down, and there you go. So you have a clear view of that deckle edge going all the way around. Now on top of this, now normally when I do a card, I take the center section out of this because this is a big waste of glitter, but I'm not doing that tonight. I don't know why. Maybe I'll have to take it apart later and do it. But I would cut out the inside of that to use for another project. And then I'm going back to my deckle cutter. Moving that over, that up. Going back to my deckle cutter, and I'm going to cut a section. The nice thing about doing this kind of work is you just look for something that looks good. And I think what I'm going to do is take off this ripped side, but I'm going to take it off with a bit of extra paper because I can use that ripped side later on. And I'm just going to use my deckle cutter to take that off, and now I have a deckle edge and a ripped edge, which is kind of cool for something else. And now let me check my numbers here. I am going to cut this at 3 3/4 by So 3 3/4 by 5. 3 3/4 by 5. So again, I'm putting it down, making sure my lines line up. And you're looking for the outermost point on your deckle to get that 3 3/4 or 3 3/4. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, 3 3/4. Almost cut that wrong. Ooh. And it has a nice, clear, completely lined base, so it's easy to line up. Make sure that's down flat. Okay, so I've got my deckle edge happening along here. I've got my deckle edge happening along here. I'm going to take a slim bit off this end. Just a little tiny bit. And then I'm doing 5 1/4 if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to go 5. 5 1/4. Okay, making sure I'm not folding anything over anywhere. Cutting that down. This is a nice piece now. It's all deckle edged all the way around. And this is the piece I'm going to use. And on here is a bunch of interesting shiny stuff. So I am going to make sure I have this in the right direction. I have to decide if I want to have this spot at the bottom or at the top. I think I like it at the top. Look at all this fine cut. It's an amazing cutter. It just cuts so finely. Alright, now again using my scrapbook adhesives. And because I'm putting this right on top of glitter paper, I'm going to try to make sure I have a fair amount. And whoops, make sure I get in the screen. And I'm just going to center it on that page. Make sure it's pressed nicely down. So now I have the glitter around the outside, I have the deckle edge on the inside, and I have the deckle edge on the outside. It just gives a little bit more to that card than having all the edges being completely straight. And you can just do this side, and this side if you want, but it's much easier just to do all sides. Okay, so another way you can use the deckle is to keep all of the sides straight except the front bottom side. If you were going to have a card that sat horizontally, then you could just trim across the bottom to have that fancy edge at the bottom of the card, and it would sit on that fancy edge at the bottom. So that's going to be a card for my brother's birthday. All right, let me show you some other things you can do with this. So that was easy, right? It didn't take any time at all. So I have a bunch of other things that I've been playing with. So I do like to do mixed media sort of things. This one is, you can see it sideways. Here, maybe I'll lift up. My desk is a bit messy. Been working today. So this is a piece I did called Happiness. And it's just got some decoupage and some I did the background. I created the background with paints and pens, and I've got these interesting looking letters on top. So what I did to add some more interest to this is I deckled the top edge and I deckled the bottom edge, and it just gives a little bit more to the finished piece, and you can see that mounting that would be quite easy now. And I just like it at the top and at the bottom. I don't want it at either side. So that's one other thing you can do. What else have I got in here? So this was a card I made in, a base I made in one of the classes. I think that was called, I can't remember, one of the media classes. And what I did is it's just a plain white card, and I deckled the surface that I had created with my inks, and I just attached it simply on top. You're a star. And then I got one of those sarcastic quotes from Tim Holtz, and it says, "I'm sorry, did I roll my eyes out loud?" So that's just a fun card to send somebody sarcastically. But the deckled edge gives it a little bit more of a lift, other than just a straight edge. Here's another one I did. This one I did with 3 layers, all deckle edged. So the card was deckle edged, the mount was deckle edged, and my jelly print was deckle edged as well. And I just stuck a sticker on the front. That's all I had to do, and nothing inside yet. But this one says, "Together is my favorite place to be." So this could be a Valentine's card without all the Valentines. So that's another one. So there's a couple of things there. And then I played with, so I just had a big piece of this paper, same size as what this paper was, and the same color lines. And I cut it into smaller pieces. I made a card out of it, and then I cut up the other pieces. But what I did is I deckle cut them so that they're ready to put in an album or my junk journal or whatever. So those can go back in the resource bin. This is strips of deckle cut paper for my weaving. And I've done weaving before. It's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to show you just the woven parts, so it's a little easier to understand. So you can see that the deckle adds to the dimension. I'm not sure if you're getting that, but it definitely gives you a different texture when you're doing your weaving. So that's another thing you can do with it. And this is a birthday card, and this is a keychain. And so what I did is I just used that paper and I just traced the letters on the keychain. This is going to stick on with pop dots, but it's sticking on to glossy accents, so it will pop off easily so that the sentiment stays when the gift is removed. So that's one thing I like to do with stuff like that. And this one has rounded corners and straight edges on the top. It has a deckle edged underneath and then a straight boundary. So it's the exact opposite of what I did here. Or what I did here, sorry. Okay, so that's another thing you can do with it. And I'll stick that on at some point. Now, a couple of things you can use it for is if you have frames. Now, a lot of ephemera comes with packages of die-cut ephemera, but they also have a package of frames and tags. So here is a frame that I just simply took the deckle cutter and cut around the outside edge, and it just gives it that extra little bit of something to put onto your paper. So that's another thing. And then talking about tags, here is a completely deckled tag. Let me get my darker surface so you can see that. So this whole tag has been deckled from top to bottom. Okay, and that's one way you can add interest to your cards, and I would stain that. And don't forget, if you used ink on this, it would darken the edge of the cut line quicker than it would darken the interior of the paper, because this is now an open cut. And it has a really cool look to it. And then this is as big as thick as I have cut, and this is chipboard. Chipboard, I don't recommend going that thick, and it did work, if you can see. It has deckled the edge, but I had to go over it several times, and I had to basically abuse my trimmer. I had to hammer it 3 or 4 times to get through. So not recommended if you want to keep your Deckle trimmer in good shape, and it probably would dull the blade much quicker than just using it for paper. So those are some of the things that I've created with using the Deckle trimmer. And let me just lift up so I can give you a little more view. You can see my stamps there. So it's a fun tool to play with. You can also use this for matting. So in the same way that I used it here for matting the jelly plate print, you can also use it for matting on your layouts if you're not a card person. For mixed media, it's fantastic. It's always on my table for mixed media and for art junk journaling. And as if you've just logged in recently and you missed the original conversation that happened at the beginning, I went over some of the good things I like about the Deckle trimmer. And as I said in the beginning, this Deckle trimmer is now a well-used part of my toolkit. And I wasn't sure when I got it. I thought it was pretty funky. But I wasn't sure how much use I'd get out of it, and I'm surprised at how often I reach for it. So it is now moved out of, a drawer, and it is sitting on an open shelf with my other cutters and easily accessible. It's very clear to read. You've got centimeters and inches on it. You also have card measurements. These little embossed features are card measurements. And then this line down here is your 4 1/4. So right away, and there's your 5 1/2. So it right away tells you 4 1/4 and 5 1/2 when you're Deckle cutting, so that you don't have to try to figure that out on your own. So all in all, it was I think it's a really good, strong cutter. Again, you have to commit to the cut. You can't be loosey-goosey. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot one thing I wanted to show you. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to do it on this. You can even do rounded cuts. Now, what I mean by that is, so I am going to put this piece, maybe I'll just do this edge. I am going to put this piece on here, and I am just going to start to cut, and as I cut, I'm turning my paper, and then you get a Deckle edge cut on a round. I could have gone a little bit more steep. Maybe I'll try that now. Sorry, I'm going to get a whole new place. Whoops, I went too hard. So you can do a Deckle edge on a rounded piece of paper. And then all those ones that I just cut off are going to go into my junk journal because they're fun looking pieces. Look at the Deckle edge on that. Deckled edge little bits and pieces of paper, these are the kinds of things you want to throw into mixed media projects. And because they're funky colors, they'll be fun to work with. So I learned that on the internet. That is not my idea whatsoever, but I think it's cool. You do have to practice it a little bit to get it to work for you more evenly. And it might even not be a bad idea to have a pencil line on there to follow. But fun things that you can do with this Deckle. And I will share as I learn more and play with it more. But for now, that's all I have for you, and I hope it was worth your watching. Thank you so much for being here. Crafty Kris saying bye.